webinar over to our Director General, who will be presenting to us today on the topic of safe work, safe environment, safe people. Over to you, Ms. Atkins.
Introduction that you just made. And let me say that it is indeed a pleasure for me to be here to discuss the matter of safe work. So again, good morning all, and let me move straight to the topic. The issue of safe work has certainly been given global recognition, and the International Labour Organization can take great credit for the fact that we are all aware of the need to be safe in our work environment or be safe at work. Certainly, the issue of safe work is one of the pillars of the decent work agenda promoted by the International Labour Organization. But we all know that this issue of safety and safe work has now taken on a renewed focus, or needs to be given renewed focus, as we have dealt with the COVID pandemic and certainly the recent outbreak here in Barbados. Today's section, therefore, will seek to do a number of things. And therefore, at the end of this session, you should understand what is meant by safe work, safe environment, safe people. I will also be discussing the legislative provisions for safe work in the public service. I will address the recommended safety protocols for a safe work environment. And we will look at some proposals that for the introduction of flexible work or flexible work schedules that will work best to promote our individual safety. Now, we like to do a poll at the beginning here because we are really interested in understanding which of these areas you would like to hear most, or you would like us to pay greatest attention to, or like me to pay greatest attention to. So the 4 objectives of the session, that poll is now on your screen, and we would like you to give us some feedback on the 4 objectives, and I will shortly be able to give you the responses from that poll. So before we begin, we invite you all to give us some feedback using the information on the screen, and we will certainly be able to share the results with you. So let me remind you of the objectives. And there are that we will provide you with information on what is safe work, safe environment, safe people. We will discuss with you the legislative provisions for safe work in the public service, the recommended safety protocols for a safe work environment, and look at some proposals for flexible work options that would work best to promote our individual safety.
Okay, we've just had about 55% of persons responding, so we'll give you another 30 seconds just to record your responses.
So ladies and gentlemen, we do encourage you to complete the poll because it certainly will help us to know the information or where the emphasis should be placed in terms of the information that we are going to provide. Laura, are we ready to share that information?
Good morning, Ms. Atkins. This is Joanne. Yes, I can. If you want me to end the polling, we're currently at 75% having voted. So I can give them another 5 seconds and then I'll end the poll and share the results with you.
Okay, thank you.
If you are having challenges, technical challenges with submitting your poll, feel free to enter your comment in the chat box. What it is that you would most like to hear about this morning based on the objectives shared. Just if you are having any difficulty, just enter it into the chat box. That can work as well.
Okay, so we can share the results now. The results of our poll show that 51% of persons would like to hear more on the flexible work option that works best for individual safety, and then the recommended safety protocols for a safe work environment.
So thank you very much, Joanne. So therefore, this would give me an indication as to how I would proceed. Noting that based on your responses, it looks like if most people are interested in hearing about the proposed flexible work options, but I would still like to take the opportunity to address the first three objectives, and then to proceed to flexible work options, and that is the one on which we will spend most of our time. So therefore, let's begin. And I want to begin with, what does this mean? Safe work, safe environment, safe people. So for me, a safe work or safety at work implies that the work or work environment promotes the physical and psychological well-being or integrity of the officer. It therefore means that the workplace is free from any recognized hazard that is likely to cause physical or psychological injury in the workplace. And we know that there are several types of hazards, and I can mention a few, certainly chemical hazards, which may come from cleaning products, etc. There are those related to ergonomic issues. There are those related to environmental issues, ventilation, temperature, etc. There are those related to psychosocial issues such as stress and violence or bullying that may occur in the workplace environment. But I would like to propose to you that within the environment in which we are now operating, we may certainly have to consider adding COVID-19 as an additional hazard that we all must be aware of at this point in time. And in terms of our safety, that we need to develop responses to ensure that we are well protected from any infection to be caused by the COVID-19 virus. So let me move on now to the first objective, the second objective in terms of the legislative provisions. And here I identified two pieces of legislation. The first for me is the Public Service Act. And at Section 10 of that Act, it provides for a duty of care that must be undertaken by every permanent secretary to ensure that the provisions of any enactment in respect of the health, safety, and welfare of persons at work are observed within the ministry. Certainly, as that permanent secretary discharges that duty of care, this permanent secretary must ensure that all actions that are necessary or appropriate are taken within the relevant circumstances. So that's the first piece, that we know that as heads of departments, permanent secretaries, they have a responsibility to ensure our safety, to put it in a nutshell. The second piece of legislation that I want to refer to is the Safety and Health at Work Act, which is found at Cap 356 of the Laws of Barbados, or the Shaw Act, as it is more appropriately referred to. This piece of legislation speaks in a more direct way to employee safety and health, irrespective of whether that workplace is located in the public or the private sector. This act makes provision for securing the health, safety, and welfare of persons at work. It also provides for the protection of persons against risk to health and safety in connection with the activities of persons at work, for controlling certain emissions into the environment, and the Act seeks to consolidate the law relating to health and safety and welfare in the workplace and for any related matters. I think it is really important to note that the Shaw Act provides for a shared responsibility between the management of the ministry or the occupier of any building and employees for matters related to health and safety, or safety and health. And I will not go through those sections, but I can give you the references. And if you, when you get the opportunity, you can look at Section 9 of the Shaw Act and also Section 6 and 7, because that section sets out the responsibilities. Section 9 sets out the responsibilities of the employee with respect to safety and health in the workplace. But let me move on now to a discussion of what we consider to be, what we are now doing to create that safe environment and safe work in the public service. And as I said earlier, this renewed focus on the issue of safety and safe work has been brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. And the impact of that, of the COVID-19 pandemic has required us to review what we are doing in the workplace in terms of hygiene standards and sanitizing workplaces, etc. And as we gradually return to the public service and return to our offices, and that return certainly has been proposed for 1st June, these are issues which need to be within our focus and for which we must pay, onto which we must pay significant attention. So one of the things that we have been doing here at the Ministry of the Public Service is the development of what we are referring to as a workplace cleaning and disinfecting protocol. That protocol will give direction in terms of how we should treat things like frequently touched surfaces, and by that I mean things like doorknobs, tabletops, sculptures like switches, elevator buttons, faucets, sinks, toilets, etc. We will also give you information on approved cleaning substances for sanitizing and disinfecting the workplace. And we will give direction in terms of the frequency of cleaning. And for that purpose, we have attached to the protocol checklist, which will be used by the janitorial staff or housekeeping staff to monitor the cleaning of various areas, whether they be lunchrooms, whether they be bathroom facilities, whether they relate to general areas. I want to encourage you, though, that encourage all of us as public officers that while to understand or encourage you to maintain an appropriate level of sanitization at each our own individual workstations. Though we know that there is staff assigned to do the cleaning and the sanitizing, we want to impress upon you that this is going to be a shared responsibility going forward. The next area for us, and to which we are giving significant focus, is the managing of social interactions. And as you know, many of these protocols that I will now proceed to discuss with you have been designed or devised by the World Health Organization and locally by our Ministry of Health. But we thought that it was still important to mention them because we recognize that despite all the other steps that we might take, these remain the backbone of ensuring that we reduce any risk from the current COVID-19 virus. So we all know about the need to wash and sanitize hands regularly and to ensure that this happens throughout the day as once we are at work. We know about the need to clean individual workstations and the need to have the relevant cleaning materials to do so. And certainly the recommendations that we are going to attach to the cleaning protocol, and we're going to share that with you at the end of the session. We're going to, when we send you a copy of this presentation, we will attach that cleaning protocol so that you are aware of the provisions included there. But let me get back to dealing with managing the social interactions and to focus on the cleaning of individual workstations and ensure that you have the appropriate cleaning materials to do so. Of course, the whole issue of physical distancing is very critical, very important. And the recommended standard is 6 feet apart between persons. And this recommended, we are seeking to ensure that the physical distancing protocol is observed within ministries and departments. Of course, the wearing of masks is of importance too. And in the center of this slide, the most important is that if we are unwell or feeling unwell, that we remain at home. So that quickly takes us through the first 3 objectives. And I would now like to turn my attention to the objectives which the majority of persons indicated that they were interested in hearing. So let me talk a little bit about on to the specifics of the flex arrangement that the Ministry of the Public Service is proposing. I want to give you a bit of background and to say that we have been looking at the whole issue of flexible work arrangements since the end of 2018. Indeed, the focus on flexible working arrangements began in an effort to modernize the operations in government. However, it is recognized now that flexible working arrangements could be a useful tool or option in assisting in keeping us safe and promoting safety in the workplace. We expect that this policy will result in a number of gains within the public service. Among these are that employees will be allowed certainly to structure their work schedule to best satisfy their personal and domestic needs, promote their safety or promote our safety, and which we see resulting in a better work-life balance, which we expect will result in a better work-life balance. Flexible work arrangements will also benefit us in terms of reduced employee tardiness, absenteeism, and improved performance and productivity. And finally, it may also ensure that our clients and customers can access services over a period that is in excess of the standard workday. And when I speak of the standard workday, you know that we operate within a framework of an 8-hour workday, and we speak of the standard work week being 40 hours. So let us turn our attention now to what is a flexible work arrangement. And we define the flexible work arrangement as any type of work schedule that varies at employees' standard working hours and or place of work for a defined period. We note that flexible work arrangements or the flexible options, work arrangement options, may be considered and agreed separately or as a combination of options which are suitable to both the ministry or department and the employee. And we will talk a bit more about this as we proceed. So I want now to share with you the type of flexible working arrangements that are being considered. There are flexi time, and many of us, certainly there are agencies which are already operating a flexi time arrangement in their work. Staggered hours, telecommuting, and I am just listing them here because I will go on to discuss with you how they are defined so that you understand exactly what we are seeking to achieve. So flexi time, I've mentioned that already. Staggered hours, telecommuting, and a compressed work week. So I'll begin with an explanation of what is a compressed work week. We consider that I'm sorry, let's restore that share screen. Let's see if we can restore that. Let's see if we can work on. There again,
And Ms. Atkins, if you can just adjust your headset or your audio bit,
I
your voice is dropping in and out at times.
of discussing with you or sharing with you
Right?
our definition of what is a compressed work week. And that's where the employee works the usual number of time hours in fewer days by working longer blocks of time per day. So for example, we've given some examples at the bottom. So the first one deals with a situation where the employee works for 4 days in 1 week, benefit of having 3 days off. So if you were to work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, if you are to work a complete week in those days, it would result in the working 10-hour shifts for each of those days standard week, and with the result, the Friday of that week would be a day off. Therefore, that day would be added to the regular Saturday and Sunday that the person would be away from work. The second example is where the officer works 10 days. Where the officer works 10 days or 10 working days in a fortnight, with the result that the officer will result in the officer having the Saturday and Sunday in 1 week, and then the Friday, Saturday, or Sunday and Sunday in the other week, or any combination that is agreed upon. So again, let me repeat that the compressed work week is where an employee works the usual number of full-time hours in fewer days by working longer blocks of time per day. The next work arrangement is that of flexi time. And I want to say at this point, as I mentioned earlier, that many of our agencies already use a flexi time arrangement, but what we are focusing on are the difference at this point in terms of our proposals is that the flexi time work arrangement operates with a core time where each employee must be present at work. So the focus is on the core time or core hours where each of us or every employee will be at work. But management and the employee can begin or agree when to begin, at what hour then to begin the workday, and at what hour to end the workday. Again, we must work the mandatory number of hours that comprise the standard work week, but we can flex our time around the core time that all employees must be at work. The next flexible work arrangement is that of staggered hours. And this allows for the decision between the management or head of department, the permanent secretary, to agree within certain limits when to begin and end the workday. And therefore, the effect of having a staggered hour arrangement would be that there would be different employee arrival and departure times during the work week. or for different officers. This particular arrangement would be useful where the ministry or department interact with clients and would allow for the extension of contact hours with our clients. So we've given a little example here at the bottom. We have identified, therefore, that we have showed you the different start times, and these are just examples, of course. So start times beginning at 7:30, 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and 10 a.m. And of course, with the start times, once you're working the standard work day or the standard work hours for a work day, then it would mean or imply that there would be different, in the same way that there are different arrival times, there are different departure times across the among officers within that particular ministry or agency. So the effect of a staggered hour arrangement or flexible work arrangement would result in the start and end times of work varying among or across the employees within the ministry or department. The last flexible work arrangement is that of telecommuting. And I know that this is an arrangement that has been put in place since the advent of the COVID-19 virus. In fact, it is being used by several ministries and departments to continue their operations away from the office. The policy, however, seeks to give some framework to this process. And therefore, we have sought to provide a definition for telecommuting. And we see that as a situation where there is an approved arrangement that allows an employee to perform specific work-related duties from home or any other remote location for a specified period. And that the use of the word for a specified period is important there because we see the need to pilot, if I can use that word, this arrangement to determine the benefits that would accrue to both the employee and the ministry. So we are recommending or proposing that telecommuting arrangements be introduced in the first case for short periods. And those short periods will be determined by the management and the employee, by the head of department and the employee, but that it be identified upfront and agreed upon. And by having that arrangement and by having a short-term arrangement and by being able to test it, it also gives you the option of either ending that arrangement or extending that arrangement once it has been discussed between the head of department and the employee. We are also looking at the proposal that the officer be required to work from the office at least one day a week in the telecommuting arrangement. Of course, it is going to be important that each ministry and department reviews its operational and resource requirements to determine whether the nature of the specific job role or roles can be subject to remote working relationships. And all that is seeking to say that organizational function is going to be very critical in any assessment of whether that job can be done remotely or whether that job should be done from the office. We know that the issue of telecommuting and working at home, we are proposing that 4 days from home or from any other location and 1 day in the office. But there are circumstances where we know that this may have to be varied. And certainly we are operating under one such condition, and that is where a state of emergency has been imposed. We know that the COVID-19 outbreak has required us to stay at home. There were emergency arrangements imposed, and therefore we allow for or understand that this may be one of the situations where we can vary that arrangement and allow for full working from home or working from home for 5 days if that circumstance exists. There are others too, certainly where there may be a disruption in the operations of the workplace, where there may be a fire or water outage, etc. This is a viable option where you may have to vary the basic arrangement. Or there may be situations where, we are subject to being impacted by hurricanes, or certainly if there's any other natural disaster, the consideration could be given to varying this arrangement where the officer may be required to work from the office at least 1 day per week. The arrangement for telecommuting would carry some responsibilities on both sides. In terms of the ministry or department, we are proposing that the ministry or department must ensure that the work can be completed or working at home, or the work that the officer must undertake can be completed using existing technology. Of course, there's a need to ensure that the officer has the requisite IT equipment, software, and training. Thirdly, clarity and agreement of the performance standards. And as you know, we already have the performance review and development system in place, and we have the relevant forms and guidelines. And maybe I am speaking of turn. Certainly learning and development might say that, but I think it has been a significant achievement that they have now been able to provide that form and those guidelines in format, and you will be hearing some more from us on that issue at a later date. We also are looking at ensuring that the ministry has adequate communication arrangements in place for the officer to be kept well informed in a timely manner of any situation or situations that may be impacting the workplace. We want to ensure too that the ministry takes responsibility for any appropriate safeguards to maintain security and confidentiality. And in this regard, I know that the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology is working on an ICT protocol policy, and I'm sure that Learning and Development will be sharing that with you. And they have also been looking at a bring your own device policy, that for situations where officers may want to use their own devices, or an agreement is reached where you use your own device if you're telecommuting. And these policies will assist, protocols will assist ministries in establishing the safeguards, the relevant safeguards to maintain security and confidentiality of government information. The public officer too has certain responsibilities under this arrangement. And we are proposing that the officer must agree to the required standards of performance. And I just spoke about the performance review and development system tool. And that tool will be quite useful in ensuring that we can identify the performance standards required, that we can work on our work plans, and ensure that both the supervisor and employee are very clear about what must be achieved during the period that the officer is working at home or telecommuting. Must agree to approve communication channels, platforms, and tools. And now there's a lot of flexibility in this regard because we can use computers, the laptop, tablet for the purpose of communicating. We have various software such as Jabber, which can be used, downloaded on phones, iPhones, and on laptops and other computers to maintain communication. And even we can use Microsoft Teams, that's the new tool, new software that we're using, and even Zoom, which we are using to deliver this presentation to you. So we have several options for that. The next item relates to communication and reporting and security protocols, and this really seeks to address when do I call you, at what hour, when should you be available, issues such as that. Because when we are telecommuting, the issue here is that we must still be available for discussion of issues that may arise and for which may require our attention. So communication protocols are very, very important. Reporting protocols are very important. Are there going to be check-ins? Are we going to do a call each morning? So those are things that must be worked out, and officers must agree to. And of course, finally, the submission times for assignments and other deliverables that are agreed upon by the officer. So let me move now to the next slide. Having discussed responsibilities, so who does what in approving flexible working options? And this slide identifies 4 entities as part of this process. So certainly there's a proposal that 4 entities participate in this process. So let me begin with the head of department. A request for flexible working arrangements can be initiated by a head of department. So 1 or more employees, and we are looking at the proposal of having that presented in writing, whether it is email or hard copy, to each employee who will be affected by the change in work arrangement. We are promoting the discussion because only through discussion can you come to the arrangement that is best suited to both parties. And we are also looking at the employee having a discussion with their trade union if they so require, so that they are satisfied about the perceived benefits or that they can receive information with respect to any proposal that they are presented with in regards to having or the implementation of a flexible work arrangement. We propose that the request should be dated, that the work arrangement that is being proposed be documented, and the likely benefits to the organization and to the employee be identified. The date when the proposed change should come into effect, and where applicable, the end date, because I spoke earlier of specified periods. So we must agree on a specified period, meaning the beginning, the date when the arrangement should begin and the date when the arrangement ends, and how the ministry or department will benefit from the proposed change. Of course, proposals should be made in advance of the scheduled date of implementation to facilitate any necessary consultation. And we are recommending that the Ministry of the Public Service be made aware of any proposed changes in the work arrangement before implementation. In this scenario where the head of department initiates the request for a change in work arrangement, we are proposing that once the agreement is reached, the terms as agreed must be accurately documented with a copy retained by each party to the agreement as to the terms of the work arrangement, the flexible work arrangement. If any of the proposed changes involves or necessitate payment of any additional compensation, that arrangement or proposal to change work arrangement must of course be submitted to the Ministry of the Public Service, as only the Minister of the Public Service could give agreement to such a change. And in the event that officers do not want to participate in the proposed arrangement, that refusal must be documented in writing with the reason for the refusal. So that is where the proposal to change or to introduce a flexible work option is initiated by the head of department. But the request for a flexible work option can also be initiated by the employee. And similarly, that request to move to a flexible work option must be submitted in writing to the head of department. The application should be dated. The changes that the employee is seeking must be documented. The date when the employee proposes that the flexible work option begins and the end date should be included. So the period, the specified period should be included. The benefits that the employee or the reasons why the employee would want to move to that flexible work arrangement, and the date of any previous application. I must draw to your attention, or I must note that flexible working arrangements, we are proposing that this is a matter which should be dealt with as one of choice. And we know that each of these arrangements that I have discussed may not be applicable in all circumstances, meaning they may not all be applicable to each ministry or department. It is very important that the necessary discussion is undertaken to determine which arrangement might be more appropriate in the particular circumstances before any decision is made. We also recognize that different ministries and different departments may be able to utilize a work arrangement or a combination of work arrangements depending on the nature of their business activity, depending on the nature of their operations. But again, I must stress and emphasize that the only way that the right arrangement will come about is through discussion as well as through the piloting in some cases of the particular flexible work option. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my presentation. And I now hand you back to the moderator, Mrs. Brown, to take you through what would be a question and answer session. And she will now give you the directions for that session. Thank you.
Continue. Sorry about that, everyone. Ms. Atkins, you, as I said before, you would have given us some information that is needed as we work safely, particularly in the current reality of COVID-19. And you have also engaged us on a number of proposals that are being recommended for flexible work arrangements in the public service. And on that note, I'm going to start to read to you some of the questions that we can provide greater clarity to public officers. One question seeks to find out whether, I read it as is, how long will the managing social interactions be enforced within MDAs, or is there a required time for this practice, or will this now be the new norm? I suspect that the person who posed the question is seeking to find out whether this is a temporary arrangement or whether it is expected to be more permanent as we move forward. Ms. Atkins? Ms. Atkins, are you able to hear me? And did you hear the question?
Oh, yes, I'm hearing you now. Could you repeat that question for me? I lost you here. I lost you.
Okay.
Yes.
How long, the question seeks to find out, how long will the managing social interactions be enforced within ministries and departments? Or is there a required time only for this practice, or will this be the new norm? So I suspect that they're seeking to find out whether this is just temporary in response to COVID-19, or if this is a more permanent arrangement.
Well, it seems to me, thank you, Mrs. Brown. It seems to me that COVID-19 is going to be with us for a while. Mm-hmm. We know that when we look at the press and even as we listen to the various announcements made by the Tsar and the Prime Minister on these issues, that the issue of vaccination for this virus may be long in coming. So really we don't know how long we will be operating in an environment with COVID-19. And certainly as we come back to the workplace and this, what I call threat, continues to exist, these arrangements certainly will have to be put in place in order to ensure our safety.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question, what happens in a case if the head of department refuses to allow flexible working arrangements?
Well, as I said earlier, that the options available to any ministry or department really must be discussed between the relevant parties. The fact that officers can discuss and get receive more information and guidance from their unions is always an option, and that is, we have recognized that that would certainly be one of the options. But remember, this is something on which we must agree as parties, and therefore, whether the work of an agency can benefit from the implementation of a flexible work arrangement is something that the officer must discuss with the head of department, and a decision must be arrived at together. As I said earlier, not all options will suit each environment or each set of operations within ministries, departments, and it is really a matter for that discussion to be undertaken to arrive at a suitable compromise in terms of the work arrangement or flexible work arrangements.
Okay, we have a number of questions around, again, the environment. One question asked about the safe cleaning materials, if we can disclose that. And I just want to say to that person that you will be provided with the protocol and the list of substances right after today's presentation. In addition to which, another question, would the department use a combination of methods, and I believe flexible working methods, or is the department characterized by one approach? Ms. Atkins would have just given us the response in saying that a department can use a combination based on their own peculiar situation, the nature of their business. But an interesting one here, Ms. Atkins, if flexi-time is already active in a ministry or department, should it be suspended then in this current climate?
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. And my response to that would be that all depends on the particular circumstances. Certainly, why you are proposing that it be suspended certainly is a critical question. Does it not facilitate the operations? Is it not the best arrangement at this point in time, given the various challenges that we are experiencing with the COVID-19 pandemic? So I can't say yes or no without knowing or having access to additional information, which would assist in giving a more informed response.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, but I would say that if the flexi-time arrangement is in place and it is working for the ministry or department, I see no need to suspend.
Okay. And if there's a situation where a department cannot meet the requirements for social distancing, and if this is one directly related to the environment, if the department cannot meet the requirements for social distancing due to inadequate spacing, what is the next option for staff within this department?
Well, there are several options. Certainly, the management needs to address the whole issue of the spacing and spacing requirements. We have done that here at the Ministry of the Public Service. And those protocols should be observed in terms of the need to have that 6-foot arrangement. And there are various options that you can use. The whole issue of rotation, day off, day on,
staggered hours, as you said.
staggered hours,
Mhm.
etc. So the options are several. But again, as I say, raising this issue in the right way and ensuring that we follow the necessary protocols.
Okay. I believe that that is regrettably all the time that we have for questions today, colleagues. Some of you are still posting questions. And what I propose that we will, as I said to you earlier, is that we will attach the PDF slides for today. For instance, there was one person who wanted us to recap the process for an employee requesting flexible work arrangements. You can review the slide and that information will be provided there for you. Somebody else wanting to know if this is a completed policy or if this is a work in progress, essentially. And this is essentially what we are doing is engaging public officers on what is being proposed. And so your presence, your comments, your questions will have all been recorded. So even if we may not have had the time to answer everyone individually, they have all been recorded, and we will find an innovative way to make sure that we communicate responses to everyone. And yes, the audio will be available after the webinar, the recording. So I have one final question for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for recording your comments, your queries. I want to thank you for participating in the earlier poll, but I crave your indulgence for one more question, and that is, what was your most valuable learning moment? Valuable learning moment. That moment when the light bulb may have gone off for you, or when you had another thought about something. Please, I want to encourage you to share it. I would be most happy to hear your thoughts. I think all of us would be happy to hear your thoughts. Just record it in the chat box. I know I said hear your thoughts, but I really mean I would be happy to read your thoughts.
Flexible
So one person said, we have some noise, it seems, in the background. We have one person who says that flexible working options, the compressed work week, those were all valuable learning moments for them. And so we thank you for sharing your learning moments. So as I said earlier, please look out for the follow-up email that will contain a copy of the recording of today's webinar, a PDF of the slides so that you can review any information that you may have missed. And just before you exit, thank you, Andrea, responsibility for telecommuting. Thank you for sharing your valuable learning moments. Thank you very much. So just before you exit the space, I'm going to ask you another big ask, and that is to share with us your thoughts, your feedback. A poll will be provided, and we're going to ask you to record your feedback on today's webinar experience so that we can improve our service to you. It would only take a few short moments. And at this time, I want to express my deepest thanks to Ms. Atkins for joining us today in this webinar, as well as to the members of the Learning and Development team, our technical team, our chat team, and that worked behind the scenes to help solve some of your technical challenges. I want to express thanks to the entire LDD team for ensuring that this process went as smoothly as possible. And I want to thank you, all 250 plus of you public officers who took the time to register and took even more time to be present with us today as we discuss how we make the public service better. Remember, safe work, safe environment, safe people. I am Faye Marie Brown. Make a wonderful day. Until next time, be safe, everyone.
Colleagues, there are cleaning protocols within the chat box that you can download before you go.
Thank you.